Hello everyone. From this video on, I'll be the one telling you these stories directly. I hope this change makes the experience feel even more personal, like you're right here, listening in the dark. Or if not, I'll do my best to make you like it, little by little. And now, let's step together into the world of Creepypasta, where shadows hold the truth and the rules of faith are never what they seem. Snow kept falling as we climbed. Station 47, moving single file up the ridge road. It was supposed to be a small fire call, maybe some hikers lighting a camp stove. That's what the dispatch said, nothing more. But the ridge was silent, too silent. The snow muted our boots. The wind didn't whistle. It breathed, long, shallow like lungs behind the stone. The chapel appeared out of the mist, St. Verena's, what was left of it. Burned roof, broken cross, black scars frozen into the walls. No flame, no smoke. Only the smell, old ash, damp, like a church that never stopped smoldering. We pushed inside. My beam cut through the dark. That's when we found them. 4 kids, scattered across the broken pews. Pale, stiff, like sleep gone too far. I knelt, hands cold in the gloves, pulled one closer. Jamie. Later I'd know his name. He was breathing, barely. My glove snagged on something jagged. Metal. A broken shard from the altar rail. It sliced through easy. Skin split. Blood welled fast in the cold. Drops spattered the stone floor. I tried to press it shut, but the blood moved wrong. It didn't spread. It slid, drawn to something under the dust. A wooden cross. Old, cracked, half buried under rubble. It twitched. Just once, like a dry sponge tasting water. Then it drank. The wood darkened, veins of red running through the grain. The whole cross pulsed, quiet and eager, sucking it down. I stumbled back. My light swept upward, and the statue near the altar, face shattered, one eye gone, seemed to smile. Not carved, not broken, just smiling now. The radio hissed in my ear. Chief Holt's voice, steady, clipped. Price, status. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. All accounted for, Chief, I think. Static cracked, and then, underneath his channel, soft as breath, Amen. No one had spoken, not my crew, not Holt. I froze, holding the mic. My gloves slick with blood, my breath fogging the beam. The kids didn't move. The chapel walls groaned like ribs shifting. I forced myself to look back. The cross lay dry, empty, as if it had never touched me. But the cut on my hand kept bleeding, and I swear the statue kept smiling. We thought it was routine, another rescue. That's what I kept telling myself when we pulled those kids out of St. Verena's chapel. I wanted it to be routine, because routine meant normal, and normal meant safe. But nothing about that place or that night was routine. It marked me. I'm still trying to understand how deep the mark goes. Raven Creek isn't much to look at. A single strip of road that bends around the hills, a diner with a neon sign that flickers even when the power's fine, 2 bars where the same men drink every evening, and a hospital that looks like an old roadside motel. Fire Department Station number 47 sits in the center of it. That's been my home for years. Engines polished red. Lockers lined with turnout gear that smells like sweat, ash, and damp leather. I've spent half my life waiting for alarms to ring, for doors to roll open, for tires to bite into snow. You learn to live by routine. Fires break routine. Then routine patches over the break. That's how you keep breathing. That's how you pretend a night didn't change you. But some breaks don't heal. We carried the 4 kids out of the chapel that night. They'd been missing for days, and the whole town whispered about them like the mountain itself could hear. We found them sprawled across the broken pews, pale, silent, but breathing. The chapel burned decades ago, yet it smelled like fresh smoke when we entered. I keep telling myself that part's memory, not fact. I don't believe it, but I keep saying it anyway. They went to the hospital, the only one we've got. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The air was sharp with disinfectant. Machines lined their beds, feeding them air and fluids, keeping them halfway in the world. 3 never woke. Parents came, cried, collapsed into each other. The town prayed. One boy, Jamie Taylor, opened his eyes. He looked older than 19. His face sagged with shadows, and when he blinked it was slow, like every thought had to push through heavy water before it surfaced. I figured shock cracked him, that the chapel stole his words. But the words came, and when they did, I wished they hadn't. I wasn't sleeping. When I closed my eyes, fire collapsed inward like reversed film. Flames twisted, then folded, then vanished down the throat of the walls. Smoke dragged itself back into the cracks. The bell tolled underwater. Wax burned where no candles stood. The dreams felt like instructions, but I couldn't tell who was giving them. The cut on my hand wouldn't heal. The cross drank from me that night. I saw it. I told myself I imagined it. The skin refused to close. The flesh stayed red, as if the blood was waiting to be called again. I went to see Jamie. He lay propped in the bed, lips cracked, skin pale under the fluorescent glow. He didn't look at me at first. His eyes followed the ceiling like something was written there only he could see. When he finally spoke, the sound was little more than breath. "You touched it, didn't you? The cross." My chest froze. I didn't answer. Silence filled the space between us, heavy with the hiss of machines. He turned his head then, slow, eyes locking on mine. His lips trembled. He spoke again, each word a confession in itself. The rules. We found them, nailed to the basement wall. Someone left them there. His throat clicked when he swallowed. Then he began. One by one, each line dropped like a stone into cold water. Each ripple reached me and didn't fade. The first rule: do not speak during the echoes, because the voice that answers won't be your own. The second rule: do not turn if someone calls your name from behind. The third rule: do not touch the cross under the altar. The fourth rule: if the bell rings without wind, leave immediately. The fifth rule: do not pray in that chapel. He listens. Jamie's eyes rolled shut after the last. His breath came shallow but steady. The machines ticked on, little lights blinking in rhythm. I stood there with my own breath stuck, wanting to laugh, wanting to dismiss it as a ghost story told by frightened kids. The look in his eyes wouldn't let me. I walked out with those lines echoing like scripture that no church should keep. I told myself I'd hand the list to the chief, file it, and move on. I didn't. I folded it into my pocket like a talisman I didn't want but couldn't throw away. On the way back to the station, the mountain wind shoved the truck around, and the radio crackled with dead channels, a murmur of speech I couldn't place. I shut it off and drove in silence, counting road markers just to have numbers that obeyed me. I tried to sleep that evening. I really tried. I brewed coffee I didn't drink. I walked the block in a coat that wasn't warm enough. I stood by the truck with the hood up just to listen to an engine that obeyed the key. When I finally lay down, the pillow felt like a helmet I didn't need anymore. I told myself I'd be fine. I told myself I'd handled worse. Fire has rules you can learn. Stone has rules you can respect. The thing in that chapel didn't care about rules I knew. The bell rang at 3:15. I wasn't in the chapel. I was in my bed. The sound walked down the hallway and stood at the foot of the mattress. I sat up, sweating into cold air, my breath turning white in the room. The tower at St. Verena's fell decades ago, yet it rang, clear as a blade touched to glass. This is not routine. This is not a dream. This is a summons. Morning came gray, the kind of gray that flattens everything. I pulled on uniform pants with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, unlocked the bay doors of station number 47, and told myself to keep moving. Routine heals the break. I said it out loud just to hear it answered by the empty engine bay. They were waiting. 3 men in dark coats, 1 woman in a black veil. They stood at the edge of the lot like the snow itself had set them there while I slept. My gut tightened. Before they opened their mouths, I knew they weren't locals. Our town doesn't hold itself that straight. The first man stepped forward, tall, wiry frame held like wire pulled tight. Eyes pale, colder than the frost biting the windows. When he spoke, the sound cut clean. The accent rolled the consonants dry. "Mr. Price, we've been expecting you." I didn't answer, not at first. My name sounded wrong in his mouth, like a key turned in a lock I didn't know was there. He didn't offer a hand. None of them did. They didn't shiver. They didn't shrug deeper into their coats. They stood like markers, placed in a field after a survey begins. I asked who they were. The man's lips didn't quite smile. "We're with the Holy See." I said the press usually calls first. The woman's veil moved with a breath. "We do not represent the press." They introduced themselves without giving anything away. Monsignor Luca Radic, Father Martin Kovacs, Father Darius Petrescu, and Sister Anaya Rajan. Each name clicked into place, unfamiliar and inevitable. Titles hung in the air like frost. I kept my hands in my pockets so they wouldn't see the bandage or the tremor I couldn't control. Luca's gaze stayed on my face. It didn't waver when the siren across town tested its noon note. His voice remained calm, trimmed of anything like comfort. "We're here to ask about St. Verena's chapel, and about the cross." I told him we'd found missing teenagers and nothing else. He waited, letting the silence try to bend me. I didn't add anything. He nodded once, like I'd confirmed something anyway. Kovacs's voice came next, lower, worn down by years. He looked old enough to have seen more winters than our town has plows. "You're the captain." I said I was. I didn't correct the way he stressed the word captain, like he was pinning rank to me and checking if the metal drew blood. Petrescu studied my bandaged hand. His eyes were restless. The question came fast. "The cross absorbed blood?" I told him I didn't remember clearly. He didn't argue. He just looked to Luca as if a clock had reached the hour it wanted. Sister Anaya's voice was softer. It carried something like sorrow without asking permission to be heard. "They asked me to take them back to the chapel." Luca didn't ask. It was spoken like a command wrapped in formality. His voice left no gaps, no chance to refuse. The others stood behind him, the snow flecking their coats, their eyes locked on me with that steady Vatican stillness. I should have said no. I should have walked away. But Answers burn hotter than fear. That's why I drove them up the ridge again. The truck groaned against the slope. Pines bent heavy with white, branches brushing the roof like fingers. Ice cracked beneath the tires. Every sound was muffled, as if the mountain held its breath. I kept checking the mirrors. The headlights caught nothing but endless snow. Yet I couldn't shake the sense we were being followed. Petrescu leaned forward from the back seat. His hands clutched the seat, his words tumbling fast. The report said the cross absorbed blood. Did you see that? The cut on my hand throbbed. The bandage itched like it wanted to be torn free. I don't remember clearly. It was a lie. The memory was sharp, carved into me, but saying it aloud felt like feeding fire with dry wood. Petrescu studied me, eyes darting, lips pressed thin. He didn't argue. Luca's reflection in the mirror didn't blink, his gaze pinning me harder than the road ahead. We reached the chapel before noon. Snow had buried the threshold, a white coffin around the foundation. The roof sagged low, ribs cracked. Black streaks scarred the walls, lines of fire that never healed. The air tasted of rust, old smoke, and something else, like breath on the back of my neck. We stepped inside. Boots creaked on wood warped by age. I raised my flashlight. A narrow beam cut across the nave. Then it died. Petrescu's light went next, then Luca's. One by one, the beams blinked out, as if a hand pinched each bulb shut. The dark pressed close, my lungs locked. A glow seeped up instead. Not white, not warm. Green. Thin veins of it pushed through the cracks in the stone floor, pulsing like a buried heart. It painted our faces sick. Then the echo came. Voices. Dozens. Layered. Sliding backward as though dragged through water. Words blurred, broken, mangled, prayer. My name bent inside it, twisted until it grated like metal scraping glass. My knees threatened to fold. Luca's voice cut through, sharp and measured. Ignore the echo. It's not us. The sound steadied me, barely. We moved deeper, though every step felt like pushing against invisible weight. The air thickened, metallic, biting. My tongue stung as if the air itself had teeth. That's when I saw it. Half hidden under collapsed beams. A door of iron. Rusted. Chained with links fused black by heat. Across the lintel, carved deep, words still bled faintly. In nomine Belial. I stopped cold. The letters glistened wet, as if carved fresh moments before. My radio hissed, though I hadn't touched it. Holt's voice carried out, clipped, professional, too exact to mistake. Price, status. My chest clenched. The speaker bled more noise. The station siren. Only wrong. Backward. Rising instead of falling. An alarm played in reverse. My hands shook as I tore the radio off, the plastic colder than ice. Static boiled out, harsh, snapping like fire chewing bone. I dropped it. The green glow flared brighter, burning lines into my eyes. Petrescu's lips trembled. His whisper broke through, fast and ragged. The seal's still active. Luca yanked him back with a hand that didn't shake. Kovac muttered low Latin, the syllables warped by age, stumbling like a man trying to climb out of water. Anaya lifted her hand, fingers trembling toward the chain door. Luca's glare stopped her inches from touching. Darian hadn't moved since we entered. His face hung slack, eyes void. When he spoke, The sound crawled under my skin. It remembers. The words hollowed the room. Silence followed, so thick it weighed like snow piling on a roof ready to break. Luca broke it, voice flat, unyielding. We're leaving. We left. The chapel groaned, beams shifting like a body twisting in its sleep. Air pushed at our backs, shoving us toward the exit. Outside, the snow fell harder, a swarm of white swallowing our tracks before we even cleared the tree line. They gathered in the safe house. I drove home. My walls leaned closer than I remembered. The air carried the scent of ash. At 3:15, the clock hands froze. I lay down, and the dream dragged me back. I stood again in the aisle. Dust spun like ash in air that didn't move. The pews gaped open, broken teeth. Then his voice came. Jamie. Young. Clear. From behind, calling my name. Every part of me wanted to turn. My shoulders twitched, my neck strained. But the second rule burned hot in my head. Do not turn if someone calls your name from behind. My muscles screamed. I stayed still. I didn't turn. I woke choking, throat raw. Sweat turned ice on my skin. My hand pulsed, the wound bleeding again through the bandage, red spreading like fire under cloth. The sound of the voice lingered, thin as smoke. Dawn staggered in gray and cold. I dragged myself to the safe house. Petrescu looked worse than me. His shirt wrinkled, his glasses crooked, his face hollowed by a night without sleep. He stepped close, his whisper cutting low, trembling. If you heard him, the mark has begun. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Because he was right, and we both knew it. The safe house was colder than the ridge. The lamps burned steady, yet the light refused to chase away the damp that crept up from the floorboards. Shadows clung to the corners like they had weight. I sat at the table, the chair groaning as though it wanted me out. My hand throbbed under the bandage. I kept staring at the door, wondering if it would stay closed. Silence held until Petrescu moved. His hands shook as he laid a leather folder on the table. Dust lifted when he opened it. The smell of rot, of smoke, spilled out like something had been sealed away too long. The pages inside looked older than the house. Vellum, edges eaten by time, ink dark as dried blood. Across the cover the words stretched in Latin, hard lines that felt carved into my skin when I read them. Codex Obscura, Belial's containment ritual. The air changed when the name was spoken, like the room exhaled something it had been holding back. Kovacs flinched. Luca didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on me, as if the words had been written across my face. Petrescu's voice cracked when he began to explain. The rules you heard, they're not folklore. They're not warnings. They're locks. Each one is a piece of the containment ritual. My pulse hammered. I pulled back the bandage. The wound was still raw, edges blackened like ash. I looked at them and let out a laugh without humor. So the kids didn't stumble onto a prank. They stumbled onto a spell. Petrescu nodded. Sweat tracked down his temple. A ritual. 5 commands, each one hammered into stone and memory to keep Belial bound. They failed once. They left the rules for the next one. The words landed like nails. Do not speak. Do not turn. Do not touch. Do not stay. Do not pray. I thought of Jamie whispering them from the hospital bed. His eyes had begged me to believe. I hadn't, until now. Kovacs's hands shook against the table. His voice was dry, heavy with something he didn't want to carry. The blood completes it. The one marked must carry it. The ritual demands sacrifice. My chest tightened. The silence pressed against my skull until my own voice broke through, hoarse. You mean me. Kovac's eyes dropped. Luca finally spoke, his words cold, clipped. We didn't come to close it, Jacob. We came to finish what we failed in 1954. The date cracked open a new silence. I stared at him, but his gaze didn't waver. The cut in my hand pulsed like it agreed with him. My breath came ragged. I wanted to stand, to storm out, but my legs stayed heavy as stone. Petrescu flipped through pages, parchment whispering. Diagrams of circles, sigils, blood marks scratched across margins. He spoke faster, words stumbling over each other. The seal broke last time because the blood wasn't taken willingly. It requires a chosen one, someone marked directly by the chapel. That's why the cross drank from you. That's why the wound won't close. I pressed my palm hard against the table, as though force could ground me. But the room tilted. Kovac leaned forward, his eyes sunk deep with memory. His whisper carried years of guilt. We tried. In the fire. Darien led us. The flames rose. The smoke swallowed everything. I saw him fall. The name hung in the air. I turned my head. Darien sat in the corner, silent as always, his face pale, his hands folded like a man at prayer. The firelight flickered across him, but he didn't cast a shadow. Petrescu froze mid-turn of a page, his lips parted. He pointed to a line of script, voice cracking. It says, Father M. Darien, mortuus. He died, recorded as lost in the chapel fire. Kovac's lips trembled, his eyes glistened. He forced the words out, almost choking. He died in the fire. We all looked at Darien. He lifted his head, blinked slow. Then the corner of his mouth bent into something that wanted to be a smile, but wasn't. His voice slid into the room like smoke under a door. Then why do I remember the smoke? The words froze the air. My skin crawled. The codex lay open, ink bleeding darker across the page. My wound throbbed in rhythm with Darien's grin. I could taste ash in my mouth. Luca didn't look surprised. He only straightened, his voice cutting hard. Prepare the ritual. Tonight. The room erupted. Petrescu shook his head, stammering, panic leaking into his tone. It's not ready. The circles aren't drawn. The prayers. Luca slammed a hand down, the table cracking under the strike. His glare held Petrescu in place. We don't wait. Containment weakens with every hour. The marked is here. That's enough. Kovac lowered his head, whispering fragments of Latin. His hands traced signs in the air. His shoulders shook with the weight of old failure. Anaya closed her eyes, tears sliding down her face, her lips moving in silent prayer even as she knew the fifth rule forbade it. My own breath came sharp. I wanted to scream at them, to demand they leave me out, but my voice stayed trapped in my chest. Petrescu's fingers fumbled with a codex, turning pages, desperate. His eyes darted, his lips moving without sound. Then he looked at me, pale, broken. If we do this wrong, Jacob, there's no sealing him again. My wound pulsed. My blood knew the truth before my mouth could. The chapel had chosen. I was already bound. The rules weren't for everyone. They were for me. Locks nailed into my skin, and every lock was now turning. We gathered inside the chapel again. Snow sealed the ridge outside, but the air inside churned like a furnace. The codex lay open on the altar, its pages wet with black ink that moved like veins. Luca commanded the circle drawn. Anaya's hands shook as she dragged chalk across stone, her breath catching with each symbol. Petrescu muttered translations, his voice cracking. Kovacs lifted his arms, fingers trembling, old bones straining toward heaven. Darian stood at the edge, silent. The firelight, too afraid. My hand pulsed, the wound raw and open. I wanted to leave, but leaving wasn't written into the rules. The cross leaned against the altar, heavier than it should have been. When I lifted it, the wood groaned like a man in pain. The ritual began. Luca intoned the first line, clipped, precise. Kovacs followed, his Latin rolling heavy. Petrescu joined, his words rushing, frantic. Their voices stacked, smoke rising invisible. The walls vibrated with sound. My chest burned. My skin prickled, as though the air itself pressed against me. Then it broke. Kovacs faltered. His lips shaped the word wrong. It should have been Dominus Vincit. The Lord conquers. Instead, breath bent it. The sound warped. The word slipped. Belial Vincit. Belial conquers. The effect was instant. The cracks in the stone glowed, red pouring through like molten glass. The walls bled, not dripping, but steaming. Blood turning into vapor that hissed across the chapel. The smell hit. Copper, sulfur, charred bone. My stomach heaved. My radio snapped alive. Static shrieked, then every voice I knew, Holt, Jamie, even my own, rose in chorus. All spoke at once, all chanting. Non serviam! I will not serve. The words shook the floor, rattled through my ribs. The circle burned out. Chalk lines flared red, then split apart. The codex convulsed, its pages ripping, flipping, until it stilled on blank parchment that filled with new text, alive, rewriting itself. Darian stepped forward. His skin split along his jaw. Cracks crawled across his face. Ash glowed beneath, like embers trapped inside. His voice slid out cold. You came to bind me. You came to finish. But you've opened the door wider. Kovacs tried to stand against him. His prayer rose, loud, desperate. For a heartbeat it carried. Then fire erupted from his mouth. His words burned as he spoke them. Flames devoured his tongue. His scream cracked the air. His eyes collapsed into ash. He fell to his knees, smoke pouring from him. Anaya dropped to the ground. Her prayer rose broken, shattered by sobs. White light burst from her chest, flooding the chapel. I thought hope lived there. But the light bent, warped into crimson. Her voice was stolen, reshaped into laughter. The Lyle's voice crawled through her throat. Pray louder! I'm listening. Her scream followed, torn from her, raw and bloody. She collapsed forward, the rosary beads melting in her grip, dripping like wax. Petrescu clutched the codex. He shouted Latin fragments, each word half burned. The book fought him, letters seared into his skin, glowing as they carved. He cried out, dropping it. The codex slammed shut by itself, ink bleeding through the leather cover. The radio answered next. Holt's voice cut through, calm. Price. Status. Then Jamie's whisper laced through the static. Don't turn. Then every voice, united, thick as tar, rang from walls and floor and blood. Non serviam. The words buried me. The cross writhed in my hands, heavy, alive. It groaned like it wanted to escape. My arms shook. The wound in my palm pulsed like a heart, pumping harder, sinking with the chant. The pews cracked, splinters rained. The statues lining the chapel bled from their stone eyes, tears of ash carving lines across faces. The ceiling shook loose dust like snow. Every sound pressed down, deafening, the chant never stopping. Darian laughed. His body split wider, ribs opening to reveal ash burning where flesh should be. His voice poured like molten rock. You thought you were priests. You thought you carried scripture. But you only carried me. Kovacs, half consumed, still tried. His lips moved, prayers melting as fire crawled out of him. He collapsed. His hands smoldered to ash. Anaya shrieked, her cries turning to high laughter, splitting the air. Her rosary clattered, molten and broken. She clutched her throat, blood streaming as her prayer cut her open from the inside. Petrescu's screams filled the gaps. His palms burned, his body bent over the codex. He begged it to stop, begged in Latin, English, anything. The codex pulsed under him, each throb cracking his voice until silence ate him too. The radio rose louder, screaming static. Then one voice, my voice, flat. I will not serve. My chest locked. I fought to breathe. The cross seared me, iron burning through my grip. It moaned louder, like it carried 1,000 voices suffering at once. My vision blurred. The fire poured up from the cracks, scarlet and black, light without flame. Heat licked my skin raw. I staggered. My arms screamed with weight. The cross dragged me down. Still, I lifted. My blood roared. My bones cracked from strain. Darian's laughter surrounded me. Yes, carry it. See if it saves you. The floor tore open. Fire clawed out, pulling me closer. The heat blistered skin. My teeth clenched against the scream. The cross moaned. I forced it higher, step by step, muscles tearing. The voices hit a peak. Non serviam. Louder, unstoppable. The walls bent inward, ready to collapse. The altar split. The codex lifted on its own, pages flapping in a storm of heat. I dragged myself to the pit, the cross screaming with me. My arms gave way. I threw it into the fire. The chapel roared. The fire sucked inward, collapsing like reversed breath. The scream followed, not forward, but backward. A howl rewound. Every sound inverted. The walls snapped silent. The blood dried, black lines scarring stone. The radio died mid-chant. The codex slammed shut with a crack, and then silence. Thick, crushing, too complete. I fell forward, my chest heaving. My hand burned, the wound scorched into a deeper mark. I knew it instantly. Not a wound anymore. A seal. My body branded as vessel. Nothing moved. No voices. No fire. Only silence that smothered. Waiting. Promising. Something had ended. But something else had only begun. I woke in snow. Cold bit through my uniform, soaking into my bones. My lungs burned with every breath, each inhale sharp as broken glass. The world stretched white and endless, yet the silence was heavy, almost too heavy. I lay still for a moment, afraid if I moved the ground itself might crack and swallow me. When I finally pushed myself up, pain tore through my arms and ribs. My gloves were soaked, my chest screamed. But I stood. Where the chapel had stood, there was nothing now. Only a scar of black ash and a circle of shattered stone. No roof, no altar, no codex. Just an emptiness that felt alive, like the mountain itself had inhaled it whole. I searched for them. Luca, Kovac, Petrescu, Anaya, Darian. Nothing. Not a trace. The snow stretched unbroken but for the pit where I had fallen. The silence mocked me. I was the only one left. My hand pulsed. I lifted it, saw the burn carved deep. Black lines, the Vatican seal etched into flesh. It wasn't a wound anymore. It was a mark, a brand. My hand shook as I tried to close it. The pain stayed. The radio at my side was dead, the cross gone, the codex gone. But the brand wouldn't fade. It pulsed steady, like it had its own heartbeat. The police found me stumbling down the ridge hours later. They wrapped me in blankets, sat me under lights that felt too bright. Their pens scratched across forms while they asked the same questions, again and again. What happened to the others? They didn't make it. Where's the chapel now? Gone. Burned out of existence. Check the ridge if you don't believe me. They looked at me like I was delirious. One officer leaned close, eyes narrowed. So you're saying a church just vanished? I laughed, short and sharp. That's exactly what I'm saying. They didn't believe. They wrote trauma, exposure, hallucination. They gave me hot coffee I couldn't taste. They let me go with pity in their eyes. The Vatican never reached out. Not one word. No letter, no call. As if those priests had never come. As if their names had never existed. Silence replaced them. As though silence was the only way they worked. I resigned from Station 47. Chief Holt shook my hand once, his grip strong, his eyes steady. He didn't ask questions. He didn't have to. He'd read the report, but he knew enough not to press. I left my badge on his desk, walked out of the station without looking back. Jacob Price, fire captain, ended that day. I bought a cabin outside town, alone. No neighbors, no visitors. I filled the days with repairs. I chopped wood, fixed leaks, patched windows. The work kept my hands busy, but not my mind. At night, the silence came back. The silence always comes back. The first weeks I wrote it all down. Every detail, every scream, every face. Not a report for the department, a confession. My fire report for the dead. Words no one would read, but words that proved it happened. Proof for myself when doubt tried to slip in. The mark burned each night. Sometimes it bled, though no wound opened. Sometimes steam rose as if the skin boiled from inside. I wrapped it, but the cloth blackened. The brand lived deeper than flesh. At 3:15, always, I woke. The air thickened. My clock froze. And then the sound came. A bell. One strike, clear. It carried from the ridge, sharp enough to cut the night. There was no chapel left, but the bell rang. Always 3:15, always one strike. The first night I prayed for silence. The second night I begged. The third night I learned the truth. Prayer isn't heard. Prayer is consumed. The nights piled on. I stopped trying to sleep. I sat awake, waiting for it, staring at the window for the glow that never came. Still, the bell rang, and each time the mark burned hotter, as if it answered the call. As if it belonged to him. I don't work anymore. I don't visit town unless I must. People stare, they whisper. They think I lost my mind. Maybe I did. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. They said I sealed it. They said the ritual was complete, but the sound never stopped. They said I sealed it, but the sound never stopped. The file opens with a voice, flat and cold, the weight of archives behind it. Raven Creek Incident. Subject, Jacob Price. Status, missing. Burn marks consistent with Codex Obscura. The seal relocated. No commentary, no warning. Just another file stamped and hidden in a vault beneath Rome. I wonder how many others sound the same. Names marked as missing, stories cut short. My name is only one in a list. Nothing more, nothing less. Snow drifts heavy across Raven Creek. Headlights carve tunnels of white ahead of me as I drive. The cabin shrinks in the rear-view mirror. The town dissolves behind me. My mark burns steady against the wheel. Each pulse is a reminder that I never left the chapel. Not fully. My chest feels hollow, as if something had been carved out and taken. I don't know where I'm going. I only know I can't stay. The road winds down the ridge, pines black and tall, their branches sagging like arms ready to close. The engine hums low, my breath fogs against the glass. The heater clicks uselessly. The silence presses close until the radio, silent for weeks, screams alive. Static floods the cab, rattling my teeth, scraping the inside of my skull. I reach to shut it off, but my hand freezes halfway. The static shifts, bends, then forms a voice. Darian. His voice is calm. Too calm, as if he's riding the signal like it belongs to him. Next station, St. Helena's Cathedral. The words fill the cab. My grip tightens on the wheel. My knuckles crack under pressure. My heart beats too fast, out of step with the tires thudding against the road. I should kill the radio, rip the wires out, hurl the box into the snow. But I don't. I can't. I listen. The static bends again. It stretches, warps into the toll of a bell. One strike, then another. The sound rolls through me, not over me, through. My mark burns hotter, branding deeper. I swear I feel the skin split, raw, alive. The wheel trembles under my hands, the car drifting until I pull it back. My throat locks. The bell doesn't fade. It stretches, echo after echo, bouncing off walls that shouldn't exist. It sounds like stone towers, iron ropes, weight, slamming against bronze. A church that isn't there still calls. They said I sealed it, but the sound never stopped. The bell tolls again, louder. The road ahead stretches endless, black beneath snow. A path that feels less like escape and more like summons. Pines bow closer, branches arching like gates. The engine hums, but beneath it, I hear whispers folded into the bell. Words I can't translate. Not yet.